back to my channel of an everyday life of an Aspie. If you're new, I'm Aspie. I'm all about creating mental health and awareness and sharing my life stories with autism and mental health, as well as tips and advice, along with also fun and games and a different of the variety of content that you're likely to see. If you're into any of these, feel free to smash the subscribe button on the bottom right hand corner and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future video updates, because I usually tend to update or upload, shall we say, 3 times a week, but in saying this, it may subject to change. Just to keep an eye out either through my social medias that are listed below so that you can be in touch with me, because as we know basically now in this day and age that everyone will grieve differently or experience it differently with the loss that we come across. Many people who lose a friend or loved one basically experience several stages of grief as they deal with the loss. Psychologists who work with people as they grieve have noticed the ways that people cope with the loss. There are some commonalities, including distinct stages such as denial, anger, and depression. There are a few more to name, but what you may not know, however, is that these stages that we come across ain't about the grief of someone dying, but rather something extremely different. There's now more to it than the 5 that we hear about of these stages of grief, which I am now going to explain to you in a minute. Most people associate the word grief with the sadness that surrounds the death of a person or a loved one that they lost, right? Yet people can experience grief after many other losses. This may include a breakup, may include a separation from your partner, losing a job or a home, a part of the body like an arm or a leg has been removed, so on and so forth. With this grief process that I'm going to introduce to you all today, people go through a number of stages when they lose a loved one. You may experience them in any order and in many number of times. However, you may feel sad at the beginning, moving on to anger, and then returning back to sad. The crucial thing to remember is to take your time to grieve. Allow yourself to do it in your own unique way. Never let anyone tell you how to grieve or for how long. This is extremely up to you. Accept any help that is given to you while you're grieving though, however, because that's the main crucial part here to take on this. Also, in saying this, as I mentioned, basically with the grieving process there is more than 5 now after my research. Many people think that stages of grief are about the loss of loved one, however they are related to people who are dying rather than a personal loss. Dr. Kubler-Ross, who created the developing stages of grief, basically was the one of the 5 stages of grief I've researched. But most people don't realise that what she created was for people with the terminal illnesses, however. She wrote a book called On Death and Dying. In this book, Dr. Kubler-Ross writes about the stages of death: denial and isolation, anger, depression, and acceptance. Dr. Kubler-Ross interviews terminally ill patients and discusses how impending death affects a person. She writes about how the patient, the family, and loved ones cope with the loss. She didn't develop the stages to describe the stages of loss people go through when someone dies, however. They are about what terminally ill experience of the people. The stages include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. After some time, people adopted these phases to apply to their own personal losses, and they seem to fit well. Below you will find, or above me shall we say, you will find the stages of grief as a terminally ill person may experience them. They are also applicable to the ones losing a loved one. Just to bear in mind before I continue this on though, however, not everyone will experience the same stages of the grief pattern. Some might miss a few of the stages while they're going through the grieving process. This will be only for some people, not all, that may experience the whole 7 stages. This model is extended slightly from the original Kubler-Ross model that you may have seen as mentioned, which doesn't explicitly include the shock and testing stages. These stages, however, are often useful to understand and to facilitate to the changes that surround us. For the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, however, a Swiss psychiatrist she was introduced the concept of the 5 stages of grief in the year of 1969. What are the 5 stages of grief? According to Dr. Kubler-Ross model, there are several stages of grief through the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, with the top 5. People process their loss, whether that's a terminally ill patient or a person coping with losing a loved one. She was also interested in the way people communicate their grief to others through their words, emotions and behaviours. So as you know, the five stages or sub-stages right now. Denial. When you're in denial about the loss, however, you try to convince yourself or others that the event hasn't happened or isn't permanent. You know the facts, of course. If your spouse has died, you might accept that it has happened, but then believe for a time that his or her death means nothing to you. If your parents has had a divorce, you might try to get them back together even after they've moved on to another relationship. Following a job loss, you might go back to work thinking they didn't really mean it if they fired you. Is the next one is a typical reaction to loss, and it's one of the Dr. Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. You may be angry with the person who has left you. You may even feel angry with yourself. You're starting to doubt your capabilities and your inner existence, but why this is happening to you. You start to questioning yourself of all that, the what ifs, could have, should have, would haves. You might express the anger by shouting at people through sarcasm or by showing irritation at everything from the significant letdowns to minor problems. This stage can also happen at any time, even after you go through a period of acceptance. The benefit of the grief stages is that they help you deal with the loss and move on. Anger can energize you to just do that. Bargaining. At some point you might find yourself bargaining, trying to get back what you lost. This part of the stage of the grief and the higher power to help the person to cope with the loss. People often promise their God that they will live a better life if only they can take back what they lost. A child might promise to pick up their toys and stop arguing with their parents or siblings if their parents will get back together. Bargaining is a stage that sometimes brings up uncomfortable decisions that will go nowhere. Depression. Next in the 5 stages of grief is depression, which I'll be linking as grief and depression similar in one of my next few videos. So if you're wanting to know about this, please sit tight for this and keep an eye on it. So as I said, the next 5 stages is depression. The depression can present with any of the symptoms of clinical depression. You may feel sad and cry often. You might notice changes in your appetite or even your sleep patterns. You might have unexplained aches and pains, and at this stage you can be too painful in a breakup and in a relationship and in the death of your loved one. If you're moving through these stages of grief, divorce can seem like the end of your life, so it's natural to become depressed. It's a situational depression that may soon pass naturally as you move toward acceptance. Acceptance is the last stage of the 5 stages of grief by Dr. Kubler-Ross. You understand what you lost and recognize how important that thing or person was to you. You no longer feel angry about it, and you're finished with the bargaining to get it back. You're ready to start rebuilding your life without it. Complete acceptance brings complete peace, but often this stage is never complete. Instead, you might feel sad during the death anniversaries or angry when you feel current circumstances would work out so much better if you had just that thing or person with you now. When you accept the loss fully, you'll understand the stages of grief better. The 7 stages of grief. Obviously, Dr. Kubler-Ross has refined her model to include the 7 stages of grief as mentioned earlier. This is more of an in-depth analysis of the components of the grieving process. These 7 stages include shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance as mentioned. Kubler-Ross added the 2 steps as an extension of the grief cycle. In the shock phase, you'll feel paralysed and emotionless, and the testing, you try to find realistic solutions for coping with the loss and rebuilding your life after the loss. Other variations. There has been many different grief models over the years that has been researched about the grieving process. In addition to the 5 stage and 7 stage models you may hear about also the 4 stages of grief and the 6 stages of grief. John Bowlby, a British psychologist, studied the stages of grief and loss long before Dr. Kubler-Ross did present her 5 stages of grief. His work was with children with attachment issues. One of these, of course, is grief. Bowlby's 4 stages of grief were grief, shock and numbness, 2 yearning and searching, 3 despair and disorganisation, 4 reorganisation and recovery. The 6 stages of grief merely is an extension of Kubler-Ross's 5 stages process. However, the only difference here is that the shock stage starts before the denial. What are the stages of grief then? That is a question you can only answer for yourself. The stages of grief you go through might be different from the ones that are experiencing it differently of this stage. Getting stuck. Sometimes the grief process doesn't go well. The bereaved may become stuck in one stage of grief, unwilling or unable to move through the process. In a worst case scenario, the person can continue to be angry, sad, and in denial for the rest of their life. When this happens, they usually need to talk to a grief counselor before they can move out of the stage of grief. Otherwise, the intense pain might continue over the course of many years. Also, they may miss opportunities to build a new life by building up new relationship that will bring them happiness in the here and now. Help when you're grieving. As we know, grief counselling can help for some, not all, that become so overwhelmed after a loss of a loved one. If they're stuck in one stage of grief, this type of counselling can help them move towards the recovery stage of it. The counsellor assists and guides you as you talk about the loss, identify your feelings, and separate from and learn to live without the person you lost. Along the way, they will help you understand the stages of grief. They will support you by providing the right information about grief in general as you go through these processes. They help you identify and hone the coping skills you already are using. If the method you're trying to use for coping isn't working out, the grief counsellor can help you identify that problem and introduce you to coping skills that may work better for you. So this quickly ends a quick short video, hopefully, of grief and loss, about basically the 5 or 7 stages of grief. Smash the like if you enjoyed this. Also, in saying this, don't forget that I have got a merch store that I'm trying to hopefully add a bit more style designs in the next 2 months or so to hopefully help with extra funding, along with the crowdfunding page of basically the Patreon account. For those of you who are new today, Patreon is like a subsidy account for us creators, be it music creators, content creators that are doing mental health or water form it is that they're using as a form of the platform on YouTube, Twitch, or wherever else they may likely to fly about. Basically a bit about giving back to you guys when you do support. So if you feel to donate to me, big or small, no pressure basically, but it'd be much appreciated if you did. But hey, this will cover my cost of my rent, the travel when I do some more traveling with Aspie series, or just traveling in general if I decide in the near future to meet you guys. Below down that I've got some projects in the works that I'm still hoping that if anyone wants to participate for project number 1 of the Journey Through the Mind series that you may have seen, Lydia, who was the first participant from Life with Lydia, basically sharing her life story. So I'm hoping to do short blurts of documentary style stories basically based on this, and then saying basically if you want to be on the bandwagon in any way for that, feel free to comment below as well. And saying this, the second project of it was supposed to be an icebreaker for you guys, just to answer a series of questions, and if you do decide to come back for the second part of that Journey Through the Mind series to be a more depth storyline, please feel free, because I'm hoping later today, if all goes to plan, and I'm hoping to maybe get someone on the side to maybe animate them. Heads up, basically I was hoping in the works later today to do a second part of my book that I did based on my life of an Aspie, looking through the life of Asperger's syndrome or something along those. I'll link the link in the description below based on that as well, so that if any one of you that are maybe autistic and from the autistic community group and you are interested in participating, let me know, so that maybe we can get the ball rolling and get the short stories done and up as well as a third part of my book series, because I'm still thinking that there are certain topics I may have not touched base on from the first part of my book of the Journey Through Life with Asperger's Syndrome of mine. And also in this also, I'm trying to keep my blog up to date so I can create it as a website hopefully as of before next year, because that's my main goal. I'm still looking for someone who is willing to actually maybe help me design it from WordPress to actually put the web address in and stuff and tidy it up, so that we can actually put other bits and pieces in that you may want to see on there. As I'm at this point of time been away for a few times too because of the subtitling I'm doing. I hopefully you enjoyed this video, and do what you love what you do. Until next time, I'll see you again soon. Ciao for now.